All right, we're going to start with another way of factoring today. The rest of this week and a little bit into next, I think, if I'm looking at my calendar correctly here, is going to be based off of factoring these, I guess you could call it, yeah, they're going to be factoring these quadratic expressions. And yes, we are going to be finishing off pretty much the week with these. So you're going to be following the same steps for every single type of problem. So honestly, is 4 days of this a little bit much? It's going to seem like it. And if you catch on early, that's even better. But just never know how this is going to go. But today we're going to start out with kind of, I guess you could say, the easier ones, and tomorrow we're going to add on to it. This is, for those who stopped and grabbed a note packet from me, this actual sheet is not in your note packet. I wanted to start out with some easier ones and kind of work our way to the more difficult ones. So I wanted to start with these. So today we are going to be factoring again. So last week we factored by taking out the GCF, or factoring out the GCF. And that's going to be your very first step for all of these anyway. So there's going to be steps. So the first thing you're always going to do is you're going to factor out the GCF. So most of the time today, you won't have to do that. Most of the time, your GCF is going to be 1. So today, you have an x squared, an 8x, and a 7. They do not have an x in common for like this example 1. And then you have a 1, an 8, and a 7. The only GCF is a 1. If you feel the need to divide by 1 or put a 1 out there, you totally can. I'm not going to do that. So if it's a GCF of 1, leave it alone. Then what you do, so these are quadratics. Quadratics mean that the largest exponent is a 2. This would actually be a quadratic trinomial. That was the very first part of this entire unit, just chapter 7 unit. Once you identify that you have a quadratic, then what you are going to do is you are going to list out A, B, and C. So A, B, and C are the numbers in front of your variables in your equation. A is always the number in front of x squared. So in our case, A is going to be 1. B is always the number that's just in front of x, so B is 8. And then C is always going to be your constant, which in this case is 7. So once you've listed these out, then you move on to step 3. And you're going to find your numbers. So how you find your numbers, and this is where you're going to get really, if your mental math multiplication skills are awesome, then you're going to be great. If you struggle a little bit, these might take you a little longer. So what you do now, and this is where you have to be really careful, and hopefully everyone watches these videos, because this is like probably the hardest part, is you take A times C. So then you figure out what is A times C. So 1 times 7 is 7. And then what is B? B is 8. So you always do A times C. A times C, 1 times 7 in this case is 7. And then B is 8. And when I say you find your numbers, we are now looking for 2 numbers that multiply to get 7. And those same 2 numbers need to add to get 8. So that's where like using your mental math is going to be huge. In your head, you have to think and find the same 2 numbers that multiply to get 7, and those same 2 numbers need to add to get 8. So to get 7, the good news is there's only one way to multiply and get a 7. To multiply and get a 7, you would do 1 times 7. So then you have to ask yourself, well, is 1 plus 7 8? And it is. So our 2 numbers are 1 and 7. Once you find your numbers, then you're going to use numbers to replace middle term. So we go, this is like the very first problem is going to take the longest because we're writing all this out. I promise they don't all take this long. So we go back up to our original problem, and we are going to replace the middle term. So the 8x is going to go away. So we're going to rewrite this as x squared. Instead of 8x, we're going to use our numbers here with x's attached to it. So plus 1x plus 7x, because if I were to combine these, I would get that 8x. And then plus 7. So I use the numbers to rewrite and replace that middle term. Then you're going to cut, let's see how I'm going to describe. Cut the polynomial in half and factor out GCF. So I go here and I cut it in half, and I make sure to leave that plus sign with the 7. So I take a look here and I do the GCF of each of these. So I have x squared plus 1x. The GCF between x squared and a positive 1x is just an x. When I divide each of these by x, I am left with x squared divided by x, 2 minus 1. I have an x to the first. And then these x's will cancel, and I'm left with a plus 1. At this point, you're going to just write your answer, and I'm going to show you how you do that. So if you take a look at what we did here, your parentheses should match, and they do. So you're going to take one of those. So our answer is going to be one of those. So I'm going to put it up here, x plus 1. And then out in front, your GCFs are the other set of parentheses. We have an x plus 7. X plus 7. And that is our factored form. So that is what you're going to be doing for all of these. Let me walk you through another one to show you that they really don't take you that long. It just took us this long because we wrote them out. Let's take a look at this one. So first thing, check for the GCF. They have a GCF of 1. So leave it alone. Then you are going to list out your A, your B, and your C. A is 1, B is 6, C is 8. Then you're going to find your numbers. So to find the numbers, you do A times C. 1 times 8 is 8. And then B is 6. And now is the hard part. What two numbers multiply to get 8, and those same two numbers need to add to get 6? So you need to think of two numbers that multiply to get 8, and those same two numbers need to add to get 6. Give you a second, maybe pause it, see if you can figure it out. The numbers are 4 and 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 plus 2 is 6. So these are my numbers. Now I go back to the original problem, and I'm going to use the numbers to replace the middle term. So I take this, get rid of the 6x, and I rewrite it as x squared plus, use your numbers, 4x plus 2x plus 8. And then cut it in half. And now you do your GCFs. So x squared and a positive 4x, these two, their GCF is an x. And then when you divide everything by x, x squared divided by x, you subtract the exponents, you get x to the first. Positive 4x divided by x, these x's actually cancel each other out, and you're left with x plus 4. Do the same thing over here. 2x and 8, these two have a positive 2 in common. So divide everything by a positive 2. 2x divided by 2 is just a 1x. Positive 8 divided by 2 is a positive 4. Good news, these match. So we take one of those, and then your GCFs, x plus 2. And that is your factored form. That is how you factor. So today, if you have any questions, I need to see how are you listing this out. These are the steps that you need to follow for every problem. I didn't give you a ton of them to do because I know that they take a little bit. Let's take a look at one with a negative number. Don't worry, don't freak out. Negatives just you have to be a little bit, I don't really be that much more careful, but. So we have x squared minus 7x plus 12. So A is, because you don't have a GCF other than 1, list out your ABC. A is 1, B is negative 7, C is 12. So we are going to pay attention to the signs. A times C is 12, B is negative 7. So now we're looking for two numbers that when they multiply, you get a positive 12. Those same two numbers, when you add them, you have to get a negative 7. So in order to multiply to get a positive, it can be a positive and a positive, or it can be a negative and a negative. Because your B is a negative, that's going to be your red flag that these are both negative numbers, because you can't add two positives and get a negative. That's just not possible. So how can you multiply to get a 12? Well, to multiply to get a 12, you could do 1 times 12, you could do 2 times 6, or you could do 3 times 4. So of these ways, how can you get a 7 or a negative 7? And that would be the 3 and the 4. So this would be negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. Negative 3 plus negative 4 is a positive 7. So these are your two numbers that you're going to use to replace the middle term. So I rewrite this. X squared minus 3x minus 4x plus 12. And then cut it in half in front of that sign. So the GCF between these two is an x, and when I factor an x out, basically it just takes the x's and goes down by one exponent. You get x minus 3. Now the GCF between these two is a 4. But whatever the sign is out in front, that's what you have to keep. So it's a negative 4. So you divide everything by negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1, so bring down the x. Positive 12 divided by negative 4 is a negative 3. Now you take a look. My parentheses match each other. That's good. So I take one of those, and then you take your GCFs. And that's your final answer. Let me find one more. Let me see here if I can find one to work or try with you. Let's take a look. I think maybe I will just end it there. Maybe I'll end it there, and then we'll see if you guys have any questions as you work through. So try these out today. Let's see how we do trying these out. And then we'll come back to them a little bit tomorrow, and then we'll kind of move on from there. Good luck. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. And like I said, we are spending 4 days on this week. So if today was a little confusing, we will be revisiting this every day this week.